Okay, here we are putting together the 2214 date complication. I didn't show you the rest of the service because it's identical to the 2209. This next gear gets mounted right here. I put a little lube on that and we drop that in. That's driven off of that little pinion there in the middle, and this is going to drive the date wheel gear, I guess you would call it. Before we put anything else on, I've tinkered with this a little bit to get a good system for installing the spring that goes on this detent, I guess you would call it, because that lever can move out there pretty far. Shouldn't be too hard to put that spring in without having it under too much load. Of course, we got a dog hair in the way. What else is new? We're going to blow this with a blower later to remove any dust. So, let's get that spring turned around. There it is. I'm going to attempt to lay it in there. And let's see. I might take it off of this pad, this rubber pad. Let's do this. There we go. Okay. Let's see how that works in getting that spring installed and getting the screw in. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but I'm holding down that spring, keeping it in place, at least trying to. Come on, maybe this won't work. Okay, let's try something different. Like I said, this is my first attempt doing one of these. I haven't come up with a system yet. That spring is a little bit crazy to deal with. So let's take this off. Maybe we could all learn something here. If I had a system in place, I would have been done by now. So let's take that off. And we'll take that lever out. Let's see if we can install that spring like that and at least have it captured by that shouldered screw while it is not under tension. That makes sense. Once a spring is in place, held captive, it's easier to assemble something. There's no chance of it flying out. Okay, so you see what I mean there. That spring is captive. It's not going anywhere. So now it should be easier to install that lever. At least that's what I'm saying. Whether or not I'm right, I don't know. I'm going to lay the lever in there loosely. I'm going to call that a detent lever. Who knows what it is. And then this is also a shoulder screw. And that spring is not in the right place. I'm going to do that in a minute. The spring is held captive. We want the lever, of course I got a little magnetism on it, We want this held captive. Then we can snap the spring over. Hopefully that makes sense. Of course, I've had 14 cups of coffee this morning. Shoot. So, I got the shakes. I know. Cut back on the coffee. I'm not exaggerating. 14 cups since 6 o'clock this morning, and it's now noon. So, I'm still feeling the effects. Yeah. Okay, that screw is started. It is not seated, but nothing is going to move now. And now I should be able to get a hold of that spring and move it into place. Does that make sense? It's going to go right up in here. Let's see how we do. Look at that. There's our system. It worked. Two shoulder bolts. Screws. One here, one here. They're good. This will be easy to install like that with our date ring. Speaking of which, we're going to put right here. This, okay, let's get in the shot. If you have another system for doing that, by all means do it. Now this gear is going to be held in by a threaded screw, goes into there, but it is also shared with this top plate. Okay. Let's come around so we see everything. I'm going to line that up. And if you look right here, this has to be moved out of the way so we can get it into that ring. And then because it's pinned together, nothing's going to move. Once I put a screw in, let's start with this one right here. Once I put that screw in, it'll hold that plate and the date ring, and we won't have any problems with springs flying and such. Not that we would, because they're all captive. Okay, there you go. I can move that back and forth and it locks in. You can see the action of that spring and lever assembly. There is one more screw that's got to go in, and that is right here. And one more gear to go. Okay, and this gear I showed you disassembling had a little bit of slop in it. Actually, it had a lot of slop. It's going to go under and in. You can see that, unless that is designed to have that amount of slop, I don't know. But I did notice when I took this screw out, it is in fact stripped. And I don't know if it's the screw, I haven't checked. If the screw is stripped out or the the plate that it mounts to. Probably should have looked at that before we started. But it looks like the screw is okay. I think our bolt here, our bolt threads, screw threads on this plate are stripped out. It does seem to go, well, it does go in, and it does seem to stay in place because of the dial sitting on top of it. It's not perfectly stripped out. It does have some grip from the threads, but I can keep turning that and turning that and turning that, and it just doesn't tighten up. The bottom line is, it's working. Okay. Let's see how we're working here. We're going to set our time. Here we go. There's about the 8 o'clock position. Turning back. And there it goes. It just jumped. That was me bumping it. There you go. So that is working fine. We're going to stop here because everything else is pretty straightforward, going back together with our dial, our hands, and then mounting back into the case. So hope that helps.